Hi, everyone. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Transform Your Confidence show. I'm pleased to welcome you to this week's Mindset and Clarity themed episode entitled Building Self-Confidence Through Holistic Practices That Fit Today's Fast-Paced World. A tall order, but one that I know that my guest is absolutely going to be able to nail, and you'll find out soon why. My guest today is Alexandra Dotcheva, the author of It Really Is Simple, a holistic approach to self-confidence, a practical guide. Alexandra struggled with debilitating levels of lack of confidence for over 20 years until she finally decided that she didn't want to live as a victim of circumstance. So she took matters into her own hands by going on a search for knowledge across many doctrines and modalities, which helped her create a process to build confidence through a holistic approach, which she penned into this book that we will be diving into next. Please welcome to the show, Alexandra.
Thank you so much for having me, Raj. Such a pleasure to be here.
Oh my gosh, I have so much to talk to you about. I'm always so excited about speaking with a fellow confidence advocate, especially those who, like me, have journeyed from the opposite spectrum to get there. So, Alexandra, here's what I want to ask you first. Who were you before you started your journey towards the acquisition of self-knowledge? Who was that woman?
That woman was first of all, she was a child, 6-year-old, who started the violin with the dream of being a soloist or a great orchestra musician. And for 26 years, I was a violinist indeed. I earned my bachelor's degree in violin in Bulgaria. I'm originally from Bulgaria. Then I immigrated to the States in 2000, where I earned my master's and doctoral degree in violin. And then in 2006, the market started shrinking for classical musicians in the US. Orchestras started downsizing and even bankrupting. And you got this horrendously competitive world of hungry musicians, very, very good musicians, and you competed against between like 40 or 5 to 500 people for a single orchestra spot. And I realized I really wasn't competitive enough, much as I really had the dream to be a great violinist. And I made great progress with my violin in the United States. I had a great professor, Kevork Mardirosyan, who is now at the Indiana Bloomington School of Music. And in spite of my progress in the United States, I kept struggling for a very long time with stage fright. That was my expression of guilt for my not very, probably, how to say that, cautious and diligent practice when I was a child, because I always wanted to learn fast, to prove to everybody I was a fast learner, but I didn't really polish the details in my technique. And that lasted for a while, because when you are a child and a teenager, you know how you can be very impatient, even though your parents tell you, look, you have to slow down, you have to really hone your skills very well. And when I grew up enough to realize that I was sliding behind my peers of the same age, that's where the sense of guilt hit really bad. And the stage fright developed like you won't believe. But I wasn't able to analyze this when I was in my 20s, until I actually left the violin profession when I was 32. And years later, I was able to look back and see why this happened, where was my mistake, why couldn't I fix it? And it became very clear once I became a nurse and then a real estate investor, fighting the same type of fear of failure, but from a different perspective, the perspective that there was no going back. And I had to get it right this time or else.
So what motivated you to want to change this narrative?
For one thing, when I realized I wasn't competitive as a violinist and my entire world fell apart. There was a viola player in the orchestra, the Syracuse Symphony Orchestra, where I was employed, and she was also a registered nurse. So I figured this is the profession that will require less than 11 years of college, because I had been in college for 11 years at that time. I had defended my doctoral monograph the year prior, 2007, but in 2008, bad things started, rumors started going around that our orchestra may go down, may bankrupt. Things became very insecure, big tensions between the musicians union and the management of the orchestra, which was the business aspect of the whole venue, right? And I figured, okay, so nursing, I always wanted to know something about science. I knew absolutely nothing about science because of my specialized music education for 12 years and then the several years in college. So I resolved to learn nursing. It took 2 to 3 years to get the degree. It wasn't 4, 5, 6, 7-year degree. I said, I can do this. I'm going to read all the textbooks before the classes start. And indeed, I read the anatomy and physiology textbook 4 times from cover to cover over the summer of 2008, before my A&P class started in September of 2008. I had to learn all the scientific terminology in English. I didn't have it in Bulgarian, let alone in English. So it took me a long time to read these textbooks, but I did the same with my psychology, my chemistry, my microbiology, sociology textbooks, everything I read before the classes start, more than once.
Fascinating.
I replaced my violin practice from 7 to 9 hours of the violin. I replaced this with reading 7 to 9 hours textbooks, because I wanted to be leveled with people who are 18, 20 years old, came from high school with some science base, and I was 32, okay? So I nailed all the classes with A's, and that made me very confident because I knew that my hard work had paid off.
Yes.
Okay, and that was just the start of the confidence journey, though. That was just the start.
Wow. So let me ask you this. What steps did you take to get from no confidence to self-confidence? I feel like it's a big question, but
it's a very good question.
Yeah.
I started learning things that I never thought possible for me to learn before, and solving problems I really didn't feel like solving. That clicked together. So when I became a nurse, the year I started my job, it was the year when my orchestra bankrupted. It was a crazy timing. So I had the job waiting for me in the ICU upon graduation. So I started working as a nurse. Then I switched to a night nurse in the orthopedic trauma floor. And eventually in 2013, I became a home care nurse. I have been a home care nurse ever since. So I learned a lot about how nurses actually lived, how they worked extra shifts to cover basic bills, even though many of them had better paychecks than I did as a new nurse. The senior nurses had, based on seniority, better money, yet they were almost always broke, and they were talking about it. And they were also many times sicker than the patients they were treating. So that's why it started creeping in my mind that, okay, I have to really make sure I'm 100% healthy, physically, mentally, and emotionally. First of all, to be able to learn everything else I want to learn, to be financially independent, because clearly the job was not the path to financial independence. I thought it would be, because as a freelancing musician, I had very little money. It was okay to get by, but with the nursing, now you have money, you have a salary. Now, look at this. Now my colleagues are broke. Why is that? The 2008 crisis taught me that a 401k was not a way to save for retirement. It was an excellent way to lose your retirement. So then I started learning investing and built my real estate rental properties and businesses, right, along with the job. And after that, I also became an options trader. I learned how to manage my time to deal with all these 3 very inspirational activities that I still do to the present day. And we killed our house debt very quickly. The assets still produce excellent cash flow, which is not job related. So my boyfriend and I, we can stop working at any time we want now, but we still want to be useful to the people in the healthcare system. And the book came because I simply compiled my own system of being 100% healthy, that is perpetually healthy, through integrity in your health choices, because I have to be an example for my patients and loved ones if I want to have any credibility as a healthcare professional.
Right.
It also encompasses the financial freedom aspect, how I built all the assets. And then you have to start connecting the dots, because if you're not healthy, you will not have the energy to build everything else. For instance, I have had days at investment properties. I've been painting a house 12 hours a day with a 10-minute break in the middle to eat 2 apples. You have to have the energy and stamina to do this when you're fast reconstructing an investment property, to just give you one example, simple example. And the other thing is, if you're not healthy in the United States, you have to know that the healthcare business is the most profitable business in this country, and first cause for personal bankruptcy. So if you get crazy about your financial growth, but you neglect your health at the same time, thinking, okay, let's build this in a couple of years, then I'll take care of my health. No, you can get very sick, and that will set you back dramatically financially in your plans. So you need to take care of all the aspects of life that are super important. And for me to put it very simply in the book, I divide it into 5 life aspects to keep it simple for the reader.
Oh my God, we're going to get into that like momentarily, but let me close up this part of our conversation by asking you a question that I feel is really important for me personally, and I know for everyone watching, listening, or reading this, what does confidence look like for you today, for you?
Confidence looks to me, for me, I'm an expert of my own life. I have full control and independence over all the aspects of my life that I want to have control over, to be a holistic person, not depend on others, to be fully self-reliant with my own integrity and honesty to myself, and then being able to help others with my example. That's confidence.
You know, I feel like you've answered this next question that's coming into my head, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. How has stepping into and owning your confidence mantra changed your life?
Oh, it changes everything. But it's a two-way process, because you have to go through the challenges. You need to set the goals for yourself, including the goals that you didn't think possible. And you start doing one by one, and then the confidence grows. And then that prompts you to set more goals and challenge yourself even more. It's a very interconnected mental system, if you wish.
Absolutely. You know, I want to dive into the book now, but before we do, there's a couple of concepts that I want to get your thoughts on before we get into it. I want to first of all remind everyone what the title of your book is. It really is simple: a holistic approach to self-confidence, a practical guide. So first of all, as we get ready to, dive into the book, I want to ask you, for all of those people that aren't really familiar with these terms, what does holistic mean? Like, how do you define that?
Holistic is something that you take into consideration all the parts of the whole, but the parts themselves are defined by the whole. And I'll give you a very simple example to help the listeners with the book. I have discussed health, spirituality, career, finances, and relationships. To me, these are the holistic components of life. So you have to absolutely perfect these 5 components in your life, and then you have a whole life that is full of confidence and integrity, and you are comfortable and happy in your life. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. So to encapsulate what you just said, what is holistic confidence? Your interpretation of that.
I'm confident that I'm choosing the correct relationships, the right relationships for me. I'm confident that my career aligns with my ethical principles of helping people and learning and growing myself as a professional. I'm confident that my finances are such that I don't have to rely on a job should I choose not to. I'm confident that my spirituality is such that I find joy in everything I do during my day. If I allow myself to wisdom to see through the frustrations of the day, which is a process, but I'm a heck of a lot better now that I was 10 years ago at it. And yes, I'm very confident that I'm 100% healthy at age 46. You see me with minimal lipstick, no other makeup whatsoever, because of my diet, exercise, and detox regimen. And that's a huge part of my confidence as well.
Absolutely. It's all the pieces. It's all the pieces that make us who we are, and what makes us who we are is indicative of how we feel about ourselves. Yes, so I want to ask you this: from your experience and research, can somebody build confidence without factoring in the holistic component that you just talked about now?
They can, but if they're smart enough, they realize that they're missing on if they only prioritize one aspect of life and neglect the others. It won't be holistic, in my opinion, in my experience. There are people who tend to obsess over certain things and they're happy with it. I was not going to be happy though if I constantly prioritized all my asset building and neglected my relationship with my loved one. Because he wouldn't be happy, and he has been an integral, we're a team, right? So you have to have the partner that is willing to work with you and you're willing to respect their goals, and you mutually work together on your growth together, right? So you can't, and there are all these people that work, but the family left behind, the health is left behind. But priorities can be wrong on many levels if you ignore other important things that you may not see as important right now, but years later you will regret that you neglected them because now things have gone out of whack in your health and you have to pay all these health bills. And forget the health bills. Let's say you're a multimillionaire, you can pay your bills, but what about the time consumption going to doctor's appointments and tests, time is your most valuable asset, right?
Yes.
So you're missing out on building everything else because now your health is in the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is very well connected. So I really think, really, based on experience and what I see with my patients, the three most neglected aspects are health, money, and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And people can really set them up straight themselves, because we are the only ones who have the power of fixing our life and cleaning our house, right? But it's very hard to convince people sometimes that this is the case and have them take responsibility. Yeah,
absolutely. But this is why you've written a book about it. So let's dive into the
exactly.
book now. The book is a self-help type of guidebook. I love those types. Those are my favorite types of books. Yeah. Let me ask you this. What journey do you take people on in the book, Alexandra? Like, what you spoke a little bit about the different tranches that you focus on. What's the journey that they're going on as they work through those? So
the journey is, first I tell them a little bit about myself.
Okay.
Why I wrote the book, what brought me to the decision to write this book, and my own story, so they can see my struggles and that I'm a late starter in life. I had my midlife crisis in my 30s, and it was difficult. So anybody who wants to change their life, they can do it. That's the main message of my story in the book, in the first chapter. Then I take them to the process of how to prioritize appropriately, set priorities with specific goals and deadlines instead of some random ideas that their brain cannot catch on anything and actually create a process for completion of the goal. That's a problem, right? Then I take them on a very long journey on how to solidify their health from a dietary, exercise, and detox perspective, with rationales why you really need to consider this very seriously in your life in an increasingly polluted environment, and including food, air, water, everything around us. So cancer, $1 trillion industry, okay?
Yeah.
Very fast growing industry. Profitability of diabetes type 2. I really rip diabetes type 2 apart in the book because I just see it so often, and it's spectacularly profitable in the United States. They keep patients diabetic for decades, when diabetes type 2 is completely reversible condition because it's man-made, and it can be man-unmade, right? So the health journey is long because as a nurse, of course, I'm biased, so I've dedicated 5 chapters to health. Then I dive into spirituality, then into career, how to select your career, motives for career, how to examine your motives and purposes for learning. Then the financial journey is how to invest your hard-earned money into cash flowing assets that will make you perpetually wealthy, assets that even if you die today will keep producing cash flow for your generations. It's not like the job. If you die today, your job will not pay salary to your children, but with assets, you can secure the future of your loved one, if should anything happen to you, and you can secure your own future if you decide that at some point you don't want to work anymore because either your employer is asking you to do things that you find unethical, or you just want to pursue a different venture in your life, right? And last but not least is the journey through relationship choices. Very important journey. I mean, we all surround ourselves with people. We think having multiple friends is wonderful. Well, not so much if they influence you the wrong way, even if with the best intentions. So that's a very important discussion. And then I take them through some exercises to build self-confidence, the concept of lifelong learning, challenging your brain. Say spirituality has 2 components. One is the purification of the mind through meditation. The other one is inspiration through learning. The inspiration is through getting influenced by books or people who really inspire you to create, make you create and dream for yourself and set awesome goals. And then the lifelong learning is the brain's fitness strategy. So I have this whole spiritual concept of the brain's health that mirrors the body health, and then they unite together, okay? And all these components are really connected to each other in a way that at this point in my life, I can't see ignoring any of them if I want to be really successful and happy. Yeah,
absolutely. And you know, I'm really curious about one thing. First of all, this book is something that I feel everybody needs to get their hands on. Doesn't matter what phase of life they're in. Doesn't matter what their kind of motivating factors are, what their value system is. I feel that everybody needs to look at self-confidence from a whole perspective, and then have the tools and the resources to be able to build that for themselves in whatever kind of stage of the journey they're already on, because we're all on a journey of some sort. So that's the first thing that I want to mention to everybody, that really this book sounds like something that everybody needs to get, and something that I feel we need to teach our future generations to know how to do. We're not taught these things, guys. That's the thing. We're not taught these things. And it's interesting because even the school education system is a business. You just mentioned that the healthcare, in industry and infrastructure is a business. So is the school system. There's always a currency and monetization associated with what they're teaching you and what they want you to do with that. And the most important things that we need to learn in order to build holistic confidence within ourselves and within everything that we're doing in our lives, because everything flows from that, is not taught. This book just sounds fascinating to me. I really feel that everybody needs to go grab the book. Before we carry on, Alexandra, because there's a few other things that I really want to be able to touch upon, where can people go to go pick up the book?
The book is purchasable on my website, www.holisticselfconfidence.com. My Facebook profile, Holistic Self-Confidence, also leads to the website. As far as international buyers outside of the US, I have a page dedicated to these people on the website. So the ebook is very easy to download from the shop page of the website. You need an EPUB file reader on your computer, which is freely downloadable on the internet. The physical copy is currently available in the US because of the shipping costs to countries outside of the US. So we're trying to figure this out right now. They can contact me on an individual basis. We can ship them the book, but we may integrate some options on the website for buyers outside the US that are in English-speaking countries. But again, I have to warn you, I checked already, some of the shipping prices are more expensive than the book itself. And the ebook is just a fantastic solution for people who live outside of the United States. You can click on all the chapters, you can bring you to the chapter that is of interest. It's a very nice edition, and definitely a great solution for people who are outside of the US right now.
I love that. Again, the website address?
holisticselfconfidence.com.
Love it. So I want to ask you this. There are so many different modalities and things that, you went into studying. Talk to me a little bit about, out of all the things that you came across, all the knowledge that you kind of consumed, and all the different things that you wanted to kind of say in the book, so that people truly would go on this holistic self-discovery journey to build self-confidence and empower themselves. How did you know what from everything that you consumed would make sense for people to put into action steps to go on that journey? Because that's the hardest part, right? When
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
doing research for a book. Talk to me a little bit about your process.
It's funny you asked that question, because I think the most sellable aspect of the title of the book is a practical guide, which rarely shows when people present it. But the practical guide is really the practical advice I can give people, how they can very easily start on the health journey, very easily build a spiritual foundation, easily start on career choice. It doesn't sound easy, but actually, if you think about it, it's not that hard. And then easily understand aspects of investing to grow your wealth, and then easily select relationships that it has to be practical, it has to be accessible, an idea that is understandable to the person, and then they can integrate that simple idea in their own life situation and build from there, because my experience will never be like yours. I completely understand that. I completely understand that. So you have to have a simple system. So simply put, when you create a goal or a dream, you see a dream in front of you, and you have to figure out honestly, without other people's opinions, with your own honest, naked self, where am I right now in relation to my goal or dream? What is in the way? So the things that are in the way could be your own self-limiting beliefs, habits that need to be changed from negative to positive habits to accomplish the goal or dream. But then you also have to see who is standing in the way besides you. Usually it's mostly you, but sometimes there are other people. Can you convince these people to cooperate with you? Can you put them away from your life, if they're actively sabotaging your efforts, can you get yourself away from them? If you learn a couple of marketable skills and become financially sustainable by yourself and then build your goals. I mean, there's so many things, little things to think about that people are afraid to think about, right? So that's the practicality of the book. I challenge you to think in simple ways to build a big, complex system of your life. That's where you start. But first of all, it has to be the integrity with yourself. And it's very hard. I recently actually posted a blog post on my website. I have only 7 posts so far because I started it recently, and I don't go for quantity. I really go for quality. So every 2 weeks or 20 days, I bust out a post, right? But that last post, I really focused on why it was so hard for me to build my goals when I started on the journey. It was the hardest thing, especially when I dove into real estate investing. I had to read books of tremendously successful people to get inspired and encouraged, right? And these people had different systems and methods and stories, but they all had one same thing in common. They insisted that you wrote your goals down and set deadlines. And that seemed completely impossible because for a while, I didn't believe realistically that I could accomplish my dreams and goals because of my 20-year-old self-inflicted history of lack of self-esteem and self-confidence. So that's what I had to confront that, put the goals into paper. Then they seemed stupid. Why does this seem stupid? Oh, wait, they're not my goals. These are goals that may be approved by others. I was still playing by other people's opinions, but that took a couple of years to understand. So with the book, I'm really hopeful that people will take less than 2 years to go through that mental garbage and put it away and start clean. It takes different time for everybody, and that's perfectly fine, so long as you're willing to do it.
Right. That's the whole point, and I always say this: knowledge without action is cheap. Exactly. You need to action the knowledge. Otherwise, what's the point of acquiring it? Yeah. Who is the book for?
The book is for, well, that's also a great question, because originally it was for people going through midlife crisis or at a big crossroads in life like I was. But now with all the changes in the last 3 years, many younger people, I mean, you rarely go through a midlife crisis in your 20s, right? But now with all the changes and job opportunities lost, new opportunities coming along the way, people will have to adapt to changes even faster than my generation or the generation before mine. So this book now, all of a sudden, this audience ranges from, I thought it was between 30 and 55 years old. I would include the 20s, people in their 20s who, even if they can't exactly relate to a midlife crisis or crossroads in life quite yet, if they get the idea what this looks like, maybe it won't be as scary and frustrating for them if they actually come to that point in their 30s. It's my hope and wish, because it's hard. It's really hard. And I'm not suggesting that you necessarily have to avoid a crisis, because crises really make us learn. However, if I can prepare you just a little bit, I've done a good job with the book.
Absolutely. And, and life always throws us curveballs, right? There's always going to be something that comes at us that we had no idea that we would need to face. So to be able to have...
There is a very good saying, life is what happens to you while you plan your life. Right?
I love that.
I hate it. But it's true.
Can you say that again?
I didn't say that. I read it somewhere. Life is what happens to us while we plan our lives.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. That's something I need to write up on my whiteboard to remind myself, because I'm a huge planner. So I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely for people like me. I want to ask you this: what feedback have you gotten from people who have followed the journey of the guide to create holistic confidence? Like, what's some of the feedback that you've gotten from people, and what kinds of people are they?
Okay, I have had excellent feedback so far. Excellent feedback. So I have gotten feedback from musicians, from nurses, from people who are computer programmers, from martial artists. I was a martial artist for 12 years. Okay, that was another story, but great self-confidence builder. Highly recommend.
You are something else, lady.
Well, I needed the self-confidence, so I did everything possible to get it. But excellent feedback, because people write me back and say, your book is absolutely inspiring. We've started creating goals as a family That's the big deal with families, because teamwork, everybody on the same page. Some people changed their diets. Yay. Some people
Great.
started going to the gym finally. And as far as investing, I had several investment mentees who already knew what to expect from the book, but they said that even made more sense now that they've been reading it. So the feedback has been excellent so far. Thankfully, I put all my passion in this book. Really.
Of course.
It was a pleasure to write it.
Yes, yes. And I feel that. I feel that energy as you're talking. I mean, partly, based on your experiences and partly based on kind of, accumulating so much knowledge through, your passion and your drive to want to know how to get to, that goal that you were looking to accomplish, which is holistic self-confidence.
And the person you become while pursuing your goal. That's the real victory.
That's the real nugget of wisdom as well for everyone, to just make sure that you don't lose sight of why you're doing this, right? Yes. So important. So I want to ask you this, Alexandra. We're living through very challenging times, times that are constantly changing at kind of warp speed. How do you see people can access your process as detailed in the book to help them navigate through these fast-paced times?
Well, that all depends on their determination, their personal determination, and understanding of how challenging their life situation is, and not expecting that things will just magically fix themselves for them. I have come to believe that people have always lived through very challenging times. It's just that we didn't have the information resources to hear everybody's complaints about their situation.
Right.
Okay. And while it's true that it's hard to start and get rich if you start very poor, that is also an excuse rather than an argument, because we have seen tremendously successful and rich people starting extremely poor. They're poverty motivated, right? So throughout the centuries, there are examples of that. Rockefeller, Carnegie, you name it. I mean, it's just so many people. And it's a shame for us if we don't take advantage of the current technology and opportunities, because now more than ever, there are opportunities to create wealth. It's just that the information becomes so overwhelming because it's the information age, and sorting through the information is what it's very daunting for people, and they give up before they've even started. That's what I have found.
So how can your book help with that?
I give them specific examples of what I did and how to do that. I encourage people to search, fail, search again, analyze. It's a process that you have to go through if you really want to gain detailed knowledge about the area that you're interested in. And I also strongly suggest you get interested in more than just one area, because some people, some things get less favored by the market over time. So if you're building assets, you need to dig into a couple of asset classes to see how you can build on 2 or 3 of them, because if market conditions become less favorable to one asset class, then you rely on the other class that you've invested in for your income, and then things can switch. You can have a wonderful time, then all the assets are flourishing. It's just a never-ending process, but you have to understand it in order to control it and not be afraid of risk, in order to increase your risk tolerance level by managing highly profitable assets at higher risk levels. It's not something that school teaches. It's not going to help if you take a financial class at school or a university, because your professor is relying on a salary to make ends meet. So you need to learn from self-made millionaires. That's who I learned from. And I became extremely wealthy, and much better than if I didn't choose to pursue investing in addition to my nursing career.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating to me that even though money isn't what motivates you today, as it would have done, in your earlier days when you were seeing how, people weren't able to save money in the nursing career, right? And the reason I say this is you're still a nurse. You're still doing that.
Yeah, because my job doesn't bother me anymore. I don't feel such a big urge to quit it, because when you only rely on the job for your finances, it's like you're trapped. But when you have 7, 8 other streams of income in addition to your job, then the job doesn't bother you so much anymore. And you can pursue it on your own terms, still being very respectful to your peers in leadership, but you are better able to set your own conditions. For example, I work full-time, but I work 3 to 12-hour shifts on the weekend. The rest of the days I was writing my book. I manage properties if I have to help a resident of any of my properties or anything. I love managing my own businesses. I don't trust anybody with my money. And the only person I trust is my boyfriend of 14 years. And he's really trustworthy, but that's just it. So the two of us have our little duties and obligations within all these businesses, and it has worked great. Right? Well, of course, we have accountant that for the taxes, you can't monkey with taxes when you have businesses, but the more you grow, you really have to realize how much you have to determine for yourself and decide how much of your money do you want to spend on accountants, lawyers, or insurance agents, because the wealthier you get, the more of your wealth goes to these 3 entities, okay?
Yes.
Bookkeepers. So keep that in mind, because it can become another form of enslavement, opposite of the job. And to everybody, this is different. But to be able to confront these decisions, you need to gain the knowledge and build the determination to learn all that and be willing to spend the time and make some mistakes, make the mistakes early with less money than later. Okay, so there are these things to consider. And the book talks about that extensively.
If you had access to this book way at the beginning of your career, how do you feel it could have possibly changed your life?
It would have been nice. It would have been nice. Yeah, because, yeah, very nice, because it would have been good, I think.
Yes. You probably would have gotten still to where you are today, but perhaps quicker.
A little bit faster. I think so. Yeah, because I'm very self-disciplined and very organized, and I would have gotten regardless. But with the book, I think it would have been easy, because it just has a lot of practical advice as far as food, detox choices, because people, where do I start on a healthy diet? Well, here is exactly where you start. And I haven't recommended a single thing that I don't do myself.
Right. And that's what I love.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't have integrity. I can't just say people, hey, do this, and I'm doing something completely opposite. That's not cool. Okay. But if I had this book 15 years ago, it would have been nice.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. I hear you. It's like, I feel like I want to buy the book for everyone now. It just sounds, especially the kids, the new generation, right, Alexandra? I mean, the interesting thing about like the newer generations, like the Zoomer generations, etc., is that they're not as held to ties of, conformity and, all the things that, you and I, were really grown up with, like fitting into a box that belonged to someone else, right? So can you imagine if they had this book? Because on the other side, although they have more of a freedom mentality, there still needs to be some understanding of how to use that to your benefit. You still need the tools. You
need some experience in order to understand what to conform to and what not to conform to. You have to have some values based on experience. And when you say you want to buy the book for everybody, that's very nice of you. But I think people should invest in buying their own books, because
they'll value it more.
Exactly. And they're much more likely to take action. For example, before I bought my investment real estate class to learn how to invest into real estate, I read 6 books by the person who sold me that class, a self-made millionaire. He earned my trust through the books, because the books are very inexpensive. And you start reading and I said, okay, I want this person to teach me how to invest in real estate, because I really trust them. And it was the best money ever spent, right? But I spent the money, which was not little money, to learn to invest. And then I took action because I had spent the money. If I had kept reading cheap information or free information, I would still be sitting here and not even talking with you, because I wouldn't have written the book and taken actionable steps on everything else I did. You have to invest in yourself, right? I mean, it's frustrating to people who don't have much money, but you got to understand you need to prioritize to invest in yourself. So buy the book. The ebook is $9.99. That's not expensive. I mean,
absolutely,
right? The paperback is $25.95 in the US available, right? So you can buy them the books, but I say, guys, buy the book, because that's how you invest in yourself, and you buy more books and more books, because my book is not the only book that can teach you good things. But the good thing about this book is that it integrates all these aspects health, spiritual, career, financial, and relationships. And then you can branch out to specialized literature about all these 5 aspects. But it can be more confusing because there's just so much to know. This is a very, very simple start guide. And trust me, it works because I've done it for like over 20 years now.
I love that. Alexandra, is there anything that we haven't touched upon about today's show topic? And let me just mention what that is again. Building self-confidence through holistic practices that fit today's fast-paced world. Your thoughts?
I wanted to actually address one of your comments that you made earlier in the conversation when you said people go through college and college doesn't teach you this, doesn't teach you that. I don't know how, I know that in the other countries, college is more accessible than it is in the US right now, but the education system here is ridiculously overinflated. And in many cases, it won't guarantee you that you'll get a job for the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, yet the system wants its money back from the loan that you purchased. And now there is this perverted understanding of nobility to forgive your loans. Well, no, you take a loan, that's a responsibility. Right. It will be the same thing when you build assets. You can't just expect your loan to be forgiven because you made an irresponsible decision at some point in your life. And that's why I personally didn't pursue a teaching career as a professor in a university as a violinist, even though I have the doctoral degree. Because what do I tell my students? It might take 10 to 15 years before you score a job. Well, that's not fair. Okay. This is why, I mean, college education is nice. It gives you some foundation if it's a profession that's in demand. Demand. And the most professions in demand are the jobs that most people don't want to do. And if you're one of those people, you will end up paying this over-expensive education on a degree that you will not be able to apply yourself. And it will be a big waste of time and money and disappointment. So if I can prevent you from doing that, I will be very happy for you. Just pursue various avenues of life, not just what a cliched understanding of the easy way out, because there is no easy way out. Real life is nothing like college, which is why people perpetually stay in college now for as long as they can, right? That's what we did touch upon.
Okay, perfect. So any final thoughts that you'd like to leave everyone watching, listening, and reading this? Some words of inspiration from your life, perhaps?
I can tell people that I'm very easily accessible for conversations should they have any questions. Again, through my Holistic Self-Confidence Facebook page. I have a contact form on the website that comes to my email if they have any questions after they have written or while they read the book. I'm pretty approachable and I'm willing to engage in a meaningful conversation. I have consulted people. I do consult people if they want to learn better time management. That's on an individual basis if they're interested. I mean, after this book, you really should have to. Yeah. Don't make me write another book, please.
But let me ask you something here, because, you know, people learn in different ways. Some people like to read and make their notes and, you know, read things over and over again, and that's how they absorb, right? Other people need to have that two-way process. So the fact that you offer kind of the one-on-one, I think is very valuable for certain types of people and how they learn. So with that said, if anybody wants to tap into that or know more, where do we send them?
Use the contact form on the website.
Okay, and again, the website?
www.holisticselfconfidence.com. I can see what your goals are and build an individual based plan. I don't like protocols. I don't put people into boxes and protocols. Okay. Because if I see you have specific goals and what is impeding you to their accomplishment, I can help you with that. Okay. And you still take full responsibility about your life and everything, your goals and whatever you name it, right? Because it is your life. I can't shape your life for you, but I can see where there are some gaps, offer you solutions to these gaps per your situation, and we go from there.
And you still have to action it. It still has to be your decision at the end of the day, right?
Can do your pull-ups for you, can do your dips for you, or your 12-mile bicycle cardio for you. Can do that. I can only do it for myself.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, Alexandra, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your philosophies. I know that, you know, this is all going to be super relevant for so many people. I mean, literally anyone out there who is looking to better their course of life, and to have more control and more happiness and all the things that seem, in today's, fast-paced life to be, almost, elusive. But clearly they're not. There are ways that these things can be honed in, and they can be understood, they can be learned, and they can be actioned into the life that you want to live. Alexandra, thank you so much for coming on. And I really wish you tremendous success with the book. I really, really do.
Raj, likewise, it was a great pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope to have been helpful to your listeners.
Oh, you definitely have been. Guys, as always, I really hope that you got some real value from today's show, and will share everything that we talked about today and this episode with anyone that you feel really needs to get this, the learnings and the insights that Alexandra has been sharing. And please share the information about the book. I really instinctually, I gutturally feel that it's going to help every single person that comes into contact with it. I also hope that you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel at the Open Chess Confidence Academy so that you never miss an episode, and we drop them every Wednesday. You can also download the Transform Your Confidence show if you prefer to listen. Podcast platforms everywhere, just go and hop over there and download it. And you can also do the read, because we also take all of our podcasts and we transcribe them into written format. Just hop on over to the website at the openchessconfidenceacademy.com/media/podcast. And I'll see you next week for another invaluable episode packed with insights and learnings to help empower your work, your life, and your spirit. Take care. You know that I adore you, and I can't wait to see you next week.